The relationship between the United States and Iran continues to demonstrate complex dynamics involving simultaneous diplomatic engagement and military posturing that creates uncertainty regarding regional stability and conflict prevention. Current negotiations address long-standing disagreements over nuclear program limitations and ballistic missile development, while military deployments and security arrangements in the region reflect broader strategic competition concerns. These parallel tracks of engagement and deterrence create conditions where miscalculation or escalation could significantly affect regional security arrangements and global strategic stability. This analysis will examine three critical dimensions of current U.S.-Iran relations. First, we will assess the documented status of diplomatic negotiations and the specific areas where agreement and disagreement persist. Second, we will analyze the military and strategic context that shapes both countries' regional positioning and security calculations. Third, we will explore the implications of current trends for regional stability and the potential for broader conflict escalation or successful diplomatic resolution. The diplomatic foundation involves ongoing discussions regarding Iran's nuclear program and compliance with international agreements and monitoring requirements. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran Nuclear Deal, was signed in 2015 with participation from the United States, Iran, and several European countries, along with China and Russia. The United States withdrew from this agreement in 2018, leading to a series of escalatory steps by both countries that complicated subsequent diplomatic efforts. Current diplomatic contacts involve both direct and indirect communications through various channels, including European intermediaries and international organizations. These discussions address multiple contentious issues including uranium enrichment levels, centrifuge development, ballistic missile programs, and regional activities that affect neighboring countries. The complexity of these negotiations reflects the interconnected nature of nuclear technology, delivery systems, and broader regional security concerns. Iranian nuclear program development has continued with varying levels of international monitoring and transparency. The International Atomic Energy Agency maintains inspection protocols and publishes regular reports on Iranian nuclear activities, though access and cooperation have fluctuated depending on broader diplomatic relationships. Current uranium enrichment levels and stockpiles exceed those specified in the original nuclear agreement, creating technical and political challenges for any renewed diplomatic arrangement. The ballistic missile dimension involves Iranian development of increasingly sophisticated delivery systems that neighboring countries and international partners view as potential threats to regional stability. Iranian officials characterize these programs as defensive measures, necessary for deterrence against potential external threats. The relationship between nuclear technology and delivery system development creates concerns about potential military applications regardless of stated peaceful intentions. Regional military arrangements involve substantial U.S. military presence in the Middle East through various base agreements, naval deployments, and security partnerships with regional allies. This presence includes naval forces in the Persian Gulf, air bases in several countries, and integrated air defense systems designed to protect allied nations and maintain maritime security. The scale and positioning of these forces reflect both long-term strategic commitments and responses to specific threat assessments. Iranian military capabilities include conventional forces, asymmetric warfare capabilities, and relationships with regional proxy organizations that extend Iranian influence beyond its borders. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates independently from regular military forces and maintains relationships with various groups throughout the region. These relationships create network effects where local conflicts can involve Iranian interests and capabilities indirectly. The strategic context involves competition for regional influence between different power centers and alliance systems. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other regional powers maintain their own military capabilities and diplomatic relationships that affect the broader security environment. These relationships create complex alliance dynamics where bilateral U.S.-Iran tensions intersect with multiple other regional conflicts and competitions. Economic sanctions represent a significant component of current U.S. policy toward Iran, affecting multiple sectors of the Iranian economy, including energy, banking, and technology. These measures aim to create economic pressure that encourage policy changes regarding nuclear programs and regional activities. The effectiveness and humanitarian impact of sanctions remain subjects of ongoing debate among policymakers and international observers. The core analytical question involves how military deterrence and diplomatic engagement can coexist without creating escalation dynamics that undermine both objectives. The simultaneous pursuit of military pressure and negotiated solutions creates tensions where actions intended to strengthen negotiating positions may actually reduce the likelihood of successful diplomatic outcomes by increasing mistrust and raising stakes for all parties. The mechanism through which military deployments affect diplomatic calculations operates through both deterrent and provocative channels. Military presence can demonstrate commitment to defending allies and maintaining regional stability, potentially creating incentives for diplomatic resolution of disputes. However, the same deployments may be perceived as threats that require defensive responses, creating action-reaction cycles that complicate diplomatic engagement. Intelligence and reconnaissance activities by both countries create additional layers of tension where normal security measures may be interpreted as preparation for offensive action. The challenge involves maintaining necessary security awareness while avoiding activities that appear to signal imminent conflict. Miscommunication or misinterpretation of routine military activities could trigger escalatory responses that neither side intends. The timing and sequencing of diplomatic initiatives relative to military activities affects the credibility and effectiveness of both approaches. Diplomatic overtures made while increasing military pressure may be viewed skeptically, while military deployments during active negotiations may undermine confidence in diplomatic processes. The coordination of these different policy tools requires careful attention to signaling and perception management. The key variable here often receives insufficient attention in public discussions. The sustainability of current approaches depends on domestic political support in both countries for policies that involve significant costs and risks without guaranteed outcomes. Public opinion, economic conditions, and political leadership changes can alter the feasibility of either diplomatic engagement or military confrontation regardless of immediate strategic considerations. Regional allies and partners maintain their own interests and policy preferences that may not align perfectly with either U.S. or Iranian objectives. Saudi Arabia, Israel, European allies, and other regional actors pursue independent policies that can either support or complicate bilateral U.S.-Iran diplomatic efforts. The multilateral nature of regional security means that bilateral agreements must account for broader alliance relationships and regional stability considerations. This creates constraints on both countries. Policy flexibility where domestic political pressure and alliance commitments may limit options for compromise or de-escalation. Iranian domestic politics include various factions with different views on engagement with the United States, while American domestic politics involve constituencies with strong preferences regarding Iran policy that affect congressional and electoral considerations. Now, the second-order effects become apparent in broader regional stability calculations and global strategic competition dynamics. Success or failure in managing U.S.-Iran tensions affects other regional conflicts, international non-proliferation efforts, and great power competition patterns. Regional allies adjust their own military postures and diplomatic strategies based on assessments of U.S.-Iran relationship trajectory. Nuclear proliferation concerns extend beyond Iran to other regional powers that may pursue their own nuclear capabilities if current diplomatic frameworks prove ineffective. The precedent established by U.S.-Iran negotiations affects international confidence in non-proliferation agreements and the effectiveness of diplomatic solutions to nuclear disputes. Success could strengthen international institutions while failure might encourage other countries to pursue alternative security arrangements. Energy market stability reflects regional security conditions where conflict or instability could affect oil and gas production, transportation routes, and global pricing. The Persian Gulf region contains substantial energy resources and transportation choke points that global markets depend upon for stable energy supplies. Regional instability could create economic effects that extend far beyond the immediate area of conflict. The technological dimensions of current disputes involve dual-use technologies that have both civilian and military applications. International technology transfer controls, cybersecurity concerns, and space-based capabilities create additional areas where cooperation or conflict between the United States and Iran affects broader international security arrangements. European allies face particular challenges in balancing their relationships with both the United States and Iran while pursuing independent diplomatic initiatives. European investment in Iran and energy relationships create economic interests that may not align with U.S. sanctions policies. The effectiveness of international coordination depends on managing these different priorities and maintaining allied unity despite divergent interests. We can identify three plausible scenarios for the evolution of U.S.-Iran relations based on current diplomatic and military trends. The diplomatic progress scenario involves successful negotiation of renewed agreements that address nuclear concerns while providing Iran with economic relief and security assurances. This outcome requires both countries to make substantial compromises and accept constraints on their preferred policies. Early indicators for this scenario include sustained diplomatic contacts, confidence-building measures that reduce immediate tensions, and domestic political support in both countries for negotiated solutions. International support for diplomatic frameworks and willingness by European allies to facilitate negotiations would support this outcome. Gradual implementation of agreed measures, rather than immediate comprehensive solutions, would indicate movement towards successful diplomatic resolution. The continued tension scenario involves maintenance of current diplomatic engagement without breakthrough progress while military postures remain elevated but stable. This outcome reflects the difficulty of resolving fundamental disagreements while avoiding immediate escalation to conflict. Both countries would maintain current policies while seeking incremental progress on specific issues. Indicators for this path include periodic diplomatic meetings without substantial agreement, maintained military deployments without significant expansion, and continued sanctions without major escalation. Public statements that emphasize continued diplomatic commitment while maintaining firm policy positions would characterize this approach. Regional stability would depend on managing periodic crises without allowing them to escalate to broader conflict. The escalation scenario emerges if diplomatic efforts fail while military tensions increase due to specific incidents, policy changes, or regional developments that affect both countries' security calculations. This could involve military confrontation, expanded sanctions, or regional conflicts that draw in both U.S. and Iranian forces indirectly through proxy relationships. Key indicators include breakdown of diplomatic contacts, significant military reinforcement in the region, or specific incidents involving U.S. and Iranian forces or interests. Regional conflicts that involve Iranian-supported groups against U.S. allies could trigger escalatory dynamics. Domestic political changes that reduce support for diplomatic engagement would also indicate potential movement toward this scenario. Each scenario carries distinct implications for regional stability and global security arrangements. Successful diplomacy would demonstrate the continued viability of negotiated solutions to international disputes while potentially creating frameworks for addressing other regional conflicts. This outcome could strengthen international institutions and non-proliferation regimes. Continued tension without resolution creates ongoing uncertainty that affects regional economic development, military planning, and alliance relationships. Extended periods of elevated tension without resolution typically create pressure for either diplomatic breakthrough or eventual confrontation as domestic political sustainability diminishes over time. Escalation scenarios could involve multiple regional actors and create broader instability that affects global energy markets, international trade routes, and alliance relationships. Regional conflict involving U.S. and Iranian interests could complicate other international priorities, including strategic competition with China and Russia. Our analysis reveals several confirmed patterns and significant uncertainties regarding future developments. The parallel pursuit of diplomatic engagement and military deterrence creates complex dynamics where progress in one area may be undermined by developments in another. The involvement of multiple regional actors with independent interests complicates bilateral U.S.-Iran relationship management. The technical complexity of nuclear and missile technology issues requires extended negotiation periods that may not align with political timeframes for achieving results. Domestic political pressures in both countries create constraints on policy flexibility that affect the feasibility of comprehensive negotiated solutions. However, the potential consequences of diplomatic failure provide incentives for continued engagement despite persistent disagreements. Regional allies and international partners maintain interests in avoiding broader conflict that could affect their own security and economic interests. We will continue monitoring confirmed diplomatic contacts, military deployment changes, and regional developments as they emerge. The relationship between diplomatic engagement and deterrent military postures provides insights into contemporary challenges of managing international disputes, involving both alliance relationships and nuclear proliferation concerns.